Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating journey. We're looking at how the evolution of the Indian middle class actually, and kinda inadvertently, set the stage for modern psychological addictions. Now, we hear the term middle class thrown around all the time, right? Sometimes it's even used a bit dismissively. But today, we're going to dive right into the powerful historical forces that shaped this huge demographic, and how the pursuit of a better, more comfortable life accidentally created this massive emotional vacuum. A vacuum that, honestly, today's digital addictions are just all too eager to fill.
So here's our roadmap for bridging these historical roots to the struggles we face today. The society's backbone, a shifting cultural landscape, the psychological slope, filling the emotional void, and finally, awareness and prevention.
Okay, let's jump straight into Section 1, the society's backbone, the origin of the middle class.
You know, the middle class didn't just poof into existence out of thin air. It was born right out of industrialization to become the absolute cultural engine of our world. Unlike ancient warriors or, say, saints, this specific societal class was literally forged in the fires of modernization. By stepping away from traditional family businesses, this new group built their whole foundation on acquiring new skills. They figured out pretty quickly that to secure their future in a world that was changing lightning fast, education was the ultimate currency. Education literally became their biggest capital. It shaped a whole mindset that was totally focused on progress and security.
What's really fascinating here is how the post-independence generation anchored themselves in a very specific set of core values. They thrived on simple living and just had this profound love for stability. They'd constantly ask themselves, well, how much is actually needed? And that led to a real culture of frugality. Influenced heavily by Gandhian simplicity, truth and nonviolence, they actively avoided extremes. They walked what we called the middle path. For them, it wasn't about how much money you had in your pocket. It was all about how much peace you had in your mind.
Which brings us to Section 2, a shifting cultural landscape, the cost of convenience.
Now, this stark contrast is absolutely crucial to understanding the dilemma we're in today. We transitioned from the traditional Wada culture, where folks lived in these massive, close-knit joint families with deep community ties, right over to the modern flat or apartment culture. And yeah, sure, the modern flat brought incredible convenience right to our fingertips. But the trade-off? We traded emotional closeness for individual space and freedom. The actual physical walls of these new nuclear families inadvertently built invisible emotional walls between people.
And then enter the modern consumer market. As the middle class grew, they became the absolute prime target for markets that were constantly whispering this one promise: your life can be even better. And while physical comforts absolutely skyrocketed, we got better gadgets, sleeker furniture, faster vehicles. It also paradoxically widened that emotional distance. The whole idea of personal space and individual freedom totally took over, but they left behind a deep, often unrecognized sense of isolation right inside those super comfortable modern flats.
Moving on to Section 3, the psychological slope, the descent into modern addiction.
Okay, we really need to fundamentally redefine addiction for the modern era. The traditional word for addiction is vyasan, which breaks down so perfectly to viparit asan. Literally, that means taking a posture or an action that goes completely against your own well-being and health. It's not just about the classic vices anymore, like alcohol or tobacco. Today, taking a posture against your well-being includes digital habits like endless social media scrolling, compulsive gaming, or even relying way too heavily on energy drinks. Basically, it's anything that harms your baseline health.
So how exactly does this happen? Well, psychologists are urgently warning us that addiction isn't some sudden, dramatic drop off a cliff. It's actually a highly deceptive, dangerous psychological slope. You start right at step 1, with just simple curiosity. Then, step 2, you experiment a little. By step 3, the attraction really takes hold. And before you even know it's happening, bam, you're at step 4, an unbreakable habit. It's like you step onto the slope voluntarily, but then gravity just does the rest of the work. And guess who is standing right at the very edge of this slope? The specific age range of 13 to 16 years old. They are the absolute most vulnerable demographic right now. Why? Well, at this age, the psychological urge to experiment is at its absolute peak. But on the flip side, their neurological capacity to turn back, to recognize the danger and just hit the brakes, is incredibly low. And these modern digital attractions, they are perfectly, almost surgically engineered to pull this exact demographic right down that slope.
That leads us right into Section 4, filling the emotional void, the danger of normalization.
Today we've inadvertently normalized some seriously dangerous coping mechanisms just by wrapping them up in friendly packaging. We call them harmless my time, or we celebrate them as a normal part of weekend culture. I mean, think about it. If two people are drinking and one stops while the other binges, society often turns a blind eye just because, hey, it's the weekend, right? We are completely ignoring the glaring warning signs of dependency simply because these behaviors have become socially acceptable ways to escape our high-stress, emotionally distant routines.
And this right here is the absolute core of the issue. Smartphones, endless scrolling, compulsive gaming, they aren't just bad habits. They are desperate attempts to fill a massive emotional void. Remember that big shift we talked about? From the connected WADA culture to the isolated flat culture? Well, that shift created a massive empty space in our daily lives. When community and deep familial connections start to fade away, addiction rushes right in to act as this sort of artificial glue, trying to fill that painful emptiness.
Let's look at how we fix this in Section 5, Awareness and Prevention, Rebuilding the Connection.
So, to stop the slide down that dangerous psychological slope, we absolutely must rely on three incredibly sturdy pillars. First up is self-awareness. You have to be honest with yourself and actually monitor your own screen time and habits. Second, open communication. We've got to bridge those emotional gaps by actually talking, like truly talking, with parents, teachers, and friends. And third, finding positive alternatives. We have to consciously replace the mindless scrolling with real-world engagement. Get out there and play sports, dive into the arts, or pick up a good book. Basically, you have to fill that void with something real.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take a hard, honest look at your own daily routines. Look at your screen time. Look at the emotional walls that might exist in your modern flat culture and think about the state of your family connections. Remember, the middle class built its true strength on connection and values, definitely not on isolation. So I want to leave you with this vital question. When you inevitably feel that emotional emptiness, what will you reach for?
Thank you so much for hanging out with me today as we unpacked the hidden connections between our societal history and our modern nines. If this explainer gave you a new perspective on your own habits, please subscribe, like, and